The fluorescent lights hummed softly as Rosa pushed her cleaning cart down the long marble hallway. It was almost midnight, and the concert hall had finally emptied out. The well-dressed crowd had left hours ago, trailing expensive perfume and animated conversations about the performance they had just witnessed. Now, only the echo of her footsteps and the squeaky wheel of her cart broke the silence. Rosa had been doing this job for 8 years now. Every night she arrived at 10 o'clock, changed into her gray uniform, and spent the next 6 hours making sure the Riverside Concert Hall sparkled for the next day's visitors. She mopped floors, emptied trash bins, wiped down brass railings, and polished the wooden seats until they gleamed under the chandeliers. Most people would find it boring work, but Rosa had a secret. She actually loved working here. At 42 years old, she had cleaned plenty of places, office buildings, shopping malls, hotel lobbies, but nothing compared to this. Here, if she timed it right, she could hear the tail end of the evening performances. Sometimes she would pause in the hallway, her mop in hand, and listen to a violin concerto or an opera singer hitting those impossibly high notes. The music would seep under the heavy auditorium doors and find her there in the corridor. And for those few minutes, she could close her eyes and forget about the aching in her lower back or the bills waiting at home. Tonight had been a piano recital. She had heard bits and pieces of it while cleaning the lobby. The pianist was young, probably in his 20s, and technically very good. The audience had clapped enthusiastically, but something had been missing. Rosa couldn't quite put her finger on it. The notes were all correct, the timing was perfect, but there was no soul in it. No heartbreak, no joy. It sounded like someone playing piano, not like someone speaking through the piano. She would know the difference. Rosa pushed open the door to the main auditorium and rolled her cart inside. The space always took her breath away, even after 8 years. Red velvet seats stretched out in neat rows, rising up toward the back of the hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from the painted ceiling, depicting angels and clouds. And there on the stage, bathed in a single spotlight, sat the grand piano. It was a Steinway. She knew this because she had read the gold lettering on its side many times while dusting it. The piano was kept on stage at all times, too valuable and too heavy to move back and forth. It was her job to clean it carefully after every performance, removing finger smudges from the glossy black surface, making sure no dust settled on its keys. Rosa started with the seats, working her way down each row with her dust cloth. She had a system. Always start from the top and work down. That way you never had to clean the same spot twice. Her supervisor had complimented her efficiency many times. What he didn't know was that she worked quickly so she would have a few extra minutes at the end of her shift. Minutes she spent near the piano. As she cleaned, her mind drifted back to another time, another place, Guatemala. She had been 17 years old, wearing the white blouse and navy skirt of the National Conservatory uniform. Her teacher, Professora Alvarez, had just told her that she had real talent. Not just good, but special, the kind of talent that could take her places. "You have something that cannot be taught, Rosa," the professor had said, her wrinkled hand patting Rosa's shoulder. "Technique we can teach, but feeling? That comes from here." She had pointed to Rosa's heart. Rosa had believed her. She had practiced 6 hours a day, her fingers flying over the keys of the conservatory's old upright piano. She had dreamed of studying in Europe, of playing in great concert halls, of making her parents proud. But then her father had gotten sick. The medical bills piled up. Her younger brothers and sisters needed school supplies, needed food. The conservatory scholarship covered tuition, but nothing else. Her family needed money more than they needed her dreams, so she had quit. At 18, she started working at a restaurant. At 19, she married Luis, a kind man who worked construction. At 20, she had her first daughter. At 22, the second. They were happy, or happy enough. When Luis suggested moving to America for better opportunities, she had agreed. She didn't think about the piano anymore. There was no room for old dreams when you were raising 2 children in a new country where you barely spoke the language. Then Luis had died. A heart attack at 40, leaving her alone with 2 teenage daughters and rent to pay. That was 3 years ago. She had cried until there were no tears left. And then she had gone looking for work. Any work. The concert hall job had been a gift from above. It paid $9 an hour, which wasn't much, but it was steady. And there was the music. Rosa finished the seats and moved to the stage. She swept it carefully, making sure no dust or debris remained. Then she approached the piano, This was always the last thing she cleaned. She saved it for last because once she was done with the piano, her shift was over. She had to clock out and go home. She pulled out her special cloth, the soft microfiber one she used only for the piano. Gently, she wiped down the smooth black surface. The wood was so polished that she could see her reflection in it. A middle-aged woman with gray streaks in her dark hair, pulled back in a practical bun. Tired eyes, rough hands. Not the young girl who had once dreamed of concert halls. Rosa glanced at the large clock on the back wall. She had 12 minutes before she needed to clock out. The night supervisor was working the other building tonight. Nobody would come by. Her heart started beating faster. She looked around the empty auditorium one more time, then carefully sat down on the piano bench. She never touched the keys during her shift. That was an unspoken rule she had made for herself. The piano wasn't for her. She was just the cleaning lady. But lately the urge had been getting stronger. 25 years since she had really played. 25 years of silence. At home, she had a small electric keyboard she had bought at a thrift store. She practiced on it late at night when her daughters were asleep, using headphones so she wouldn't disturb anyone. But it wasn't the same. The keys were plastic and light. They didn't have the weight, the resistance, the pure sound of a real piano. Rosa's hands hovered over the Steinway's keys. Just one note. Just to remember what it felt like, she pressed middle C. The sound rang out, pure and clear, filling the empty hall. It echoed off the walls and ceiling surrounding her. She closed her eyes, then she pressed another key. And another. Before she knew it, her hands were moving through a scale, then a simple melody. Her fingers remembered things her mind had forgotten. They curved naturally over the keys, finding the notes like coming home after a long journey. Rosa looked at the clock. 8 minutes left. Her hands settled into position and she began to play Chopin. The notes flowed from her fingers, soft at first, then building. The Nocturne in E-flat major. She had learned this piece when she was 16. Her teacher had said she played it with the wisdom of someone much older. The music filled the concert hall, and for those few minutes, Rosa wasn't a cleaning lady anymore. She was just a woman and a piano, speaking to each other in the only language that had ever made complete sense to her. She didn't hear the door open. She didn't see the figure standing in the shadows at the back of the hall, watching her with wide eyes. Rosa's fingers lifted from the keys as the final notes faded into silence. She sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, letting the echo wash over her. For a moment she had forgotten where she was. For a moment she had been 17 again, playing at the conservatory while Professora Alvarez smiled and nodded in approval. Then reality crashed back. The clock. She had to check out. Her supervisor would be making his round soon. Rosa opened her eyes and started to stand up from the piano bench. That's when she heard it, a sound from the back of the hall. A small gasp, then footsteps. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Someone was here. Someone had heard her playing. A young woman emerged from the shadows near the back entrance, walking slowly down the center aisle. She was maybe 25, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun. Even from the stage, Rosa could see that her eyes were red and puffy, like she had been crying. She wore an elegant black dress and carried a small purse. Rosa stood up quickly, nearly knocking over the piano bench. "I'm sorry," she said, her accent thicker when she was nervous. "I was just cleaning. I didn't mean to. I should not have touched the piano. I'm very sorry." She grabbed her cleaning cloth and started wiping the keys frantically, trying to erase any evidence of what she had done. Maybe this woman was someone important. Maybe she would report Rosa to the management. She couldn't lose this job, not when her youngest daughter was about to start college. "Wait," the young woman said, walking faster now. "Please wait." Rosa froze, the cloth still in her hand. The woman reached the stage and climbed the short stairs. Up close, Rosa could see mascara smudged under her eyes. Her hands were shaking slightly. "That was Chopin," the woman said. "The Nocturne in E-flat major." "Yes," Rosa whispered. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have played it. It's been so long since I touched a real piano." "How long have you been playing?" the young woman asked. Rosa didn't know how to answer. Did she count the years at the conservatory? The years of practicing in secret on her cheap keyboard? "A long time," she finally said. "But not really. I mean, I used to play, before, but now I just clean." The young woman stared at her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, she sat down right there on the stage floor, her expensive dress pooling around her. Fresh tears started running down her cheeks. Rosa didn't know what to do. She stood there awkwardly, still holding her cleaning cloth. "Are you okay?" she asked finally. "Do you need me to call someone?" The woman shook her head and laughed, but it was a sad, broken sound. "I'm supposed to play tomorrow night," she said. "The international piano competition. Finals. I've been preparing for this my entire life." Rosa had heard about the competition. Posters had been hung all over the concert hall for weeks. Young pianists from all over the world, competing for a prize that could launch their careers. The finals were tomorrow evening. She had actually been looking forward to hearing it, even if just through the doors while she cleaned. "That's wonderful," Rosa said cautiously. "You must be very talented." "I was," the woman said bitterly. She held up her right hand and Rosa saw that her wrist was wrapped in a bandage. "I injured it this afternoon, during practice. I pushed too hard, tried to get one passage perfect, and something just snapped. The doctor says I need to rest it for at least 2 weeks." 2 weeks. The competition is tomorrow. "I'm so sorry," Rosa said, and she meant it. She knew what it felt like to lose your dream. Maybe not in the same way, but she knew the pain. "I've worked toward this moment since I was 5 years old," the young woman continued. 5 years old. My parents sacrificed everything. They paid for the best teachers, the best schools. We're not rich. They worked extra jobs. My mom cleaned houses." She looked up at Rosa. "Like you." Rosa nodded slowly. "My daughter," she said. "She wants to be a doctor. I clean so she can go to school, so she can have chances I didn't have." "Your daughter is lucky," the woman said. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm being selfish. Here I am, crying about a competition when you probably have real problems." "Your problems are real too," Rosa said gently. She sat down on the piano bench, setting her cloth aside. "If something matters to you, it's real. It's important." They sat in silence for a moment. The concert hall felt enormous around them. All those empty seats waiting for tomorrow's audience. "I came back here tonight because I couldn't sleep," the young woman said. "I thought maybe if I sat in the hall, just sat here and breathed, I could make peace with it. Except that I won't get to play tomorrow." She looked up at Rosa. "Then I heard the music. At first I thought someone had left a recording playing, but the sound was too pure, too real. So I came in and I saw you." Rosa felt her cheeks grow warm. "I shouldn't have played. It's not my place. And what's your name?" the young woman asked. "Rosa." "I'm Chen Wei. Everyone calls me Wei." She stood up and walked to the piano, running her fingers lightly over its surface with her uninjured hand. "Rosa, what you just played, it was beautiful. Not just technically good. Beautiful. Like you understood every emotion Chopin put into those notes." Rosa didn't know what to say. No one had heard her play in over 20 years. No one except her daughters, who only half listened while doing their homework. "Where did you learn to play like that?" I asked, and so Rosa told her. About the conservatory in Guatemala. About Professora Alvarez and the dreams of studying in Europe. About her father's illness and having to quit. About Luis and the move to America, and raising 2 daughters alone after he died. About the electric keyboard at home and the late-night practice sessions with headphones on. Wei listened to everything without interrupting. When Rosa finished, the young woman was quiet for a long moment. "Play something else," Wei said suddenly. "Please, I need to hear more." "I really should go," Rosa said, glancing at the clock. She was already 10 minutes past her shift. "My supervisor, Pare, please," Wei said again. "Just one more piece." "Anything you want." Rosa looked at the piano, then at Wei's desperate, hopeful face. Then back at the piano. "Okay," she said quietly. "One more." She positioned her hands over the keys and began to play Rachmaninoff, Prelude in C-sharp minor. The piece started low and dark, like a funeral bell, then built into something powerful and dramatic. Her hands stretched across the keys, reaching for the big chords. She had always loved Rachmaninoff. Even though his music was written for people with bigger hands than hers, she made it work. This time she didn't close her eyes. She watched her hands move, remembering every hour she had spent practicing this piece when she was 18, back when she still believed anything was possible. When she finished, Wei was crying again, but these tears seemed different somehow. Not sad exactly. "More like overwhelmed, Rosa," Wei said, her voice shaking. "I need to make a phone call. Right now. There's someone who needs to hear you play." "What?" No, I really need to go. But Wei already had her phone out scrolling through contacts. The competition director. He's staying at the hotel across the street. He'll still be awake. She looked at Rosa. Trust me, this is important. Rosa's hands were trembling. She didn't understand what was happening. She was just a cleaning lady who had played the piano when she shouldn't have. Why was this young woman looking at her like she had just discovered something precious? Wei pressed the phone to her ear. Mr. Peterson? It's Wei Chen. I know it's late, but you need to come to the concert hall. Right now. Yes, I'm serious. I know you're tired, but trust me on this. You won't believe what I just heard. She paused, listening. No, I can't explain over the phone. You just have to hear it for yourself. Another pause. 20 minutes? Perfect. Thank you. Wei hung up and turned to Rosa with a strange smile on her tear-stained face. What did you just do? Rosa asked, feeling panic rise in her chest. Something that might change both of our lives, Wei said. Rosa's mind was racing. She looked at the clock again, then at the exit doors, then back at Wei. I can't stay, she said, her voice rising slightly. I have to clock out. My supervisor will be checking the system. If I'm late, there will be questions. How much time do you have? Wei asked. I was supposed to clock out 15 minutes ago. Wei bit her lip, thinking. Okay, go clock out. Tell your supervisor you had to clean up a spill or something. Then come back. Please, Rosa. Mr. Peterson is the most important person in classical music competition circles. If he hears you play up, I'm a cleaning lady, Rosa interrupted. I'm 42 years old. I haven't performed in over 20 years. What do you think is going to happen? That he'll magically make me a concert pianist? She shook her head. That's not how life works, Wei stepped closer. Maybe not, but don't you want to know? Don't you want someone else to hear what I just heard? To tell you that you're not crazy for still loving this after all these years? Rosa felt something crack inside her chest. That was exactly what she wanted. For someone to tell her that the hours spent practicing on her cheap keyboard weren't a waste of time, that the dreams she still had sometimes where she was on stage playing for a real audience weren't just the foolish fantasies of a middle-aged woman who should have moved on by now. 20 minutes, Rosa said finally. I'll come back, but I can't promise anything after that. I have to catch the last bus home. Wei's face lit up. 20 minutes is all we need. Rosa hurried off stage, grabbed her cleaning cart, and rushed to the employee break room. She clocked out and found her supervisor, Tom, sitting in his office eating a sandwich. Rosa, you're late, he said, not looking up from his computer. Sorry, Mr. Tom. Someone spilled soda in the balcony section. It was sticky. Took longer to clean. He waved his hand dismissively. Just don't make it a habit. Have a good night. Rosa changed out of her uniform in record time, threw on her regular clothes, a pair of jeans and a faded blue sweater, and ran back to the concert hall. Her heart was pounding, though whether from the running or from nerves she couldn't tell. Wei was waiting by the stage door. He's on his way. 5 minutes, maybe less. I don't know what to play, Rosa said, suddenly panicking. What if I mess up? What if my hands shake too much? Play what you feel, Wei said simply. That's what made your playing special. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just talking to the piano. Before Rosa could respond, the main doors opened. A man walked in wearing pajama pants and a hastily thrown-on jacket. He was maybe 60, with gray hair sticking up on one side like he had been sleeping. He did not look happy. Wei, this better be good, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. I have 16 competition participants arriving tomorrow. A journalist from the Times coming for interviews. And I've had maybe 3 hours of sleep in the past 2 days. It's good. Mr. Peterson, I promise. Wei gestured to Rosa, who was standing awkwardly near the piano. This is Rosa, she works here. Mr. Peterson looked at Rosa, then at Wei, then back at Rosa. His expression was confused and slightly annoyed. Wei, I don't understand. You called me here at midnight to meet a janitor? Rosa felt her face burn with embarrassment. This was a mistake. A huge mistake. She should never have agreed to this. She's not just a janitor, Wei said firmly. She's a pianist. A real one. She studied at the National Conservatory in Guatemala. Mr. Peterson's expression softened slightly. That's wonderful, truly. But Wei, I'm not sure what you expect me to do with this information. We have a competition to run tomorrow and you're injured and I really need to get some sleep. Just listen to her play, Wei said. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Mr. Peterson sighed deeply. He looked at his watch, then at the piano, then at Rosa. All right, 5 minutes. What would you like to play, miss? Rosa's mouth went dry. She couldn't speak. Her hands felt numb. Wade touched her arm gently. Rosa, just play. Like you did before. Don't think about who's listening. Rosa walked to the piano on shaking legs. She sat down on the bench and looked at the keys. They were just black and white rectangles. Simple. She had played these patterns thousands of times. She thought about her daughters sleeping at home, about Luis and how he used to love listening to her play on their wedding day, even though it was just an old keyboard borrowed from a friend. About Profesora Alvarez, who had believed in her when she was just a poor girl with big dreams. Rosa placed her hands on the keys and began to play. She chose Beethoven this time. Moonlight Sonata, third movement. It was fast and furious and technically demanding. Her fingers flew across the keys, moving through the rapid passages that had taken her months to master when she was young. But muscle memory was a strange thing. Her hands remembered every note, every dynamic change, every moment where the music needed to breathe. She played with her eyes open this time, watching the keys blur beneath her fingers. The music poured out of her, all the frustration and sadness and joy of the past 25 years. Every floor she had mopped, every toilet she had scrubbed, every time she had smiled and said yes ma'am to people who didn't see her as a person. Every night she had tucked her daughters into bed and kissed their foreheads and promised them that tomorrow would be better. Every moment she had spent missing the one thing that made her feel truly alive. It all went into the music. When she finished, her hands were shaking and her heart was racing. She had played it faster than she probably should have, her emotions driving the tempo, but it was honest. It was real. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Rosa turned around slowly on the bench. Way was standing with both hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face again, and Mr. Peterson was just staring at Rosa with an expression she couldn't read. How long did you say you've been working here? He asked finally, his voice strange. 8 years, Rosa whispered. And you've been playing like this the whole time? No, I mean not here. I practice at home sometimes, on a keyboard. But I haven't really played, not like before, not in many years. Mr. Peterson walked slowly down the aisle toward the stage. He climbed the stairs and stood next to the piano, looking at Rosa like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. That was extraordinary, he said quietly. Raw in some places, yes. You rushed a few passages. But the feeling, the emotion, the pure musicality, he shook his head. I've been in this business for 35 years. I've heard thousands of pianists. What you just played had something most of them spend their entire careers trying to find. Rosa didn't know what to say. She just sat there, her hands still resting on the keys. Have you ever performed publicly? Mr. Peterson asked. Not since I was 18. In Guatemala, small recitals at the conservatory. He nodded slowly, thinking. Then he turned away. Your wrist. How bad is it, really? The doctor said 2 weeks minimum, Way replied. I can't play tomorrow. I've already accepted it. What if? Mr. Peterson said slowly. And I'm just thinking out loud here, so bear with me. What if we had someone else take your slot? Way's eyes widened. You mean Rosa? I mean Rosa. Wait, Rosa said, standing up so quickly the bench scraped across the stage. No, that's impossible. I can't perform in a competition. I'm not prepared. I don't have the repertoire memorized. I don't have anything to wear. I can't. It wouldn't be for the competition itself, Mr. Peterson said, holding up his hand. You'd be playing as a guest artist. An intermission performance, maybe. Something short. It would give the judges a break and give the audience something unexpected. But why? Rosa asked. Why would you do this? Mr. Peterson smiled. Because in 35 years I've learned to recognize something special when I hear it. And what you have, Rosa, is special. It deserves to be heard. Rosa looked at Way, who was nodding eagerly, then at Mr. Peterson, who was watching her with kind, patient eyes. Then at the piano, which suddenly seemed less like an old friend and more like a doorway to something terrifying and wonderful. I need to think, Rosa said. This is too much. Too fast, of course, Mr. Peterson said, but I need an answer by morning. The program needs to be printed. Can you call me by 8? He handed her a business card. Rosa took it with trembling fingers, staring at the embossed letters that spelled out his name and title. 8 o'clock, she repeated numbly, as Mr. Peterson left the hall. We threw her arms around Rosa. You're going to say yes, right? You have to say yes. But Rosa wasn't sure of anything anymore. Her whole world had just turned upside down in the space of an hour, all because she had played the piano when she thought no one was listening. Rosa sat at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning, staring at Mr. Peterson's business card. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the occasional sound of traffic from the street below. Her daughters were asleep in their shared bedroom down the hall. She had missed the last bus and had to take a taxi home, spending money she really couldn't afford. But her mind had been too full to wait for the next one. Too full of music and memories and impossible possibilities. Play at the Riverside Concert Hall, in front of a real audience. Tomorrow night it was insane. She hadn't performed in over 2 decades. She didn't have proper concert clothes. She would probably freeze up on stage and forget everything. The audience would wonder who this middle-aged cleaning lady thought she was, sitting at that beautiful Steinway like she belonged there. But a small voice in her head kept whispering, "What if you don't freeze? What if you play exactly like you did tonight? What if this is your one chance?" Rosa picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She pressed on her older daughter's name, then hesitated. It was so late, but she needed to talk to someone, and her daughters were the only people in the world she truly trusted. She walked quietly down the hall and gently pushed open their bedroom door. "Lucia, Mija, are you awake?" A sleepy groan came from the left bed. "Mom, what time is it?" "Late, I'm sorry. But I need to talk to you. It's important." Lucia sat up, rubbing her eyes. In the other bed, her younger sister Carmen stirred but didn't wake. "Is everything okay? Did something happen at work?" "Something happened," Rosa said, sitting on the edge of Lucia's bed. "But I don't know if it's good or bad or just crazy." She told her daughter everything. About playing the piano after her shift, about Way finding her, about Mr. Peterson and his offer. Lucia listened with growing amazement, her eyes getting wider with each detail. "Mom, that's incredible," she whispered, trying to keep her voice down so Carmen wouldn't wake. "You have to do it." "I can't," Rosa said. "What if I embarrass myself? What if people laugh?"
Why would they laugh?
"You're an amazing pianist. You have to say that. You're my daughter." Lucia shook her head firmly. "No, I mean it. Do you remember when I was 10 and you played at my school's talent show? All my friends talked about it for weeks. They couldn't believe my mom could play like that. Mrs. Henderson, my music teacher, even asked if you gave lessons." Rosa did remember. It had been one of the few times she had played publicly since coming to America. She had been terrified then too, but Lucia had begged her to participate. The school had an old piano in the gym, out of tune and missing 2 keys, but Rosa had made it sing anyway. "That was different," Rosa said. "That was just a school event. This is a real concert hall with real musicians and real critics." "So what?" Lucia said. "You're a real musician too. You've just been hiding it." She grabbed her mother's hand. "Mom, when was the last time I saw you really happy? Not just okay. Not just getting through the day, but actually happy." Rosa thought about it. "When you got accepted to university," she said finally. "Besides that, something that was just for you." Rosa couldn't answer. There hadn't been anything just for her in a very long time. "Exactly," Lucia said. "You work so hard for us. You always put us first. When was the last time you did something just because it made you feel alive?" Tears started forming in Rosa's eyes. "I'm scared, Mija. I know. But Mom, fear isn't a reason not to do something. It's just proof that something matters." Lucia squeezed her hand. "What would you tell me if I was scared to try something important?" Rosa smiled through her tears. "I would tell you that you're braver than you think. That you should take the chance because you might never get another one. Then take your own advice." They sat in silence for a moment, holding hands in the darkness. Finally, Rosa nodded. "Okay, I'll call him in the morning." "I'll say yes," Lucia hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Mom." At 8 o'clock sharp, Rosa called Mr. Peterson. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone twice before he answered. "Rosa," he said, sounding much more awake than he had at midnight. "I was hoping you'd call. What's your answer?" "Yes," Rosa said before she could change her mind. "I'll play tomorrow night." "Wonderful. Can you come to the hall at 2 this afternoon? We need to do a sound check, and I'd like you to meet with our stage manager about the logistics." "I work until noon," Rosa said. "But yes, I can be there at 2. Perfect. And Rosa, thank you for saying yes. I have a feeling tomorrow night is going to be very special." After she hung up, Rosa realized she had no idea what she was going to play. She had performed 3 different pieces for Wei and Mr. Peterson last night, but none of them felt quite right for a real concert. She needed something that would show what she could do, but also say something true about who she was. She spent the morning at her other job, cleaning offices downtown, but her mind was elsewhere. She mentally ran through every major piece she knew by heart. Chopin was too delicate. Rachmaninoff might be too aggressive. Beethoven felt too serious. Then it came to her. She would play 2 pieces, one from the classical world she had studied so hard to be part of, and one from home, one that reminded her where she came from. At 2 o'clock, Rosa walked into the concert hall through the front entrance for the first time ever. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. The lobby was bustling with activity. Technicians were setting up equipment. Well-dressed people hurried past with clipboards and headsets. Wei spotted her and rushed over. "Rosa, you came. You're really doing this." "I'm really doing this," Rosa said, though her voice shook. "I think I might be sick. You're going to be amazing. Come on, Mr. Peterson is waiting." The rehearsal was both better and worse than Rosa expected. Better because the piano was perfectly tuned and the acoustics were incredible. Worse because there were people watching her, taking notes, discussing technical details she didn't understand. She felt out of place in her discount store clothes while everyone else looked so professional. But when she started playing, all of that faded away. It was just her and the music, like it had always been. She played her 2 pieces. First, Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. She had learned it when she was 17, and it still felt like coming home. The piece had everything. Gentle moments and powerful ones, technical passages that made her fingers fly and emotional sections that made her heart ache. Then she played her second piece. Something she had arranged herself during those late-night practice sessions at home. It was a traditional Guatemalan folk song her grandmother used to sing, transformed into a piano solo. She had woven in elements of classical technique but kept the soul of the original melody. It was the piece that represented her journey, from Guatemala to America, from young dreamer to struggling mother to this unlikely moment. When she finished, the small group of people in the hall was silent. Then Mr. Peterson started clapping and everyone joined in. "That was perfect," he said, walking up to the stage, especially that second piece. "What was it?" "It's called Luna de Zelaju," Rosa said. "Moon of Silayu. It's about missing home but finding light even in dark places. It's beautiful and unique. I've never heard anything quite like it." He smiled. "Rosa, I think you're going to surprise a lot of people tomorrow night." That evening, Rosa went shopping with her daughters. She couldn't afford much, but Lucia and Carmen helped her find a simple black dress at a thrift store. It wasn't fancy, but it was elegant. When Rosa tried it on, Carmen said, "Mom, you look like a real concert pianist." Rosa looked at herself in the mirror. She did look different somehow. Not younger, but more like herself. Like the girl she used to be and the woman she had become had finally met in the middle. "I feel like I'm dreaming," she said. "Then it's a good dream," Lucia said. "Don't wake up." The next morning, Rosa woke up to find that Wei had posted something on social media. A video. Rosa's heart stopped when she realized what it was. Wei had recorded her playing the night they first met, when Rosa thought no one was watching. The caption read, "Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. Tonight at the Riverside Concert Hall, a hidden talent will finally be revealed. You won't want to miss this." The video already had thousands of views, and it was only 9 in the morning. Rosa's phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. Text messages from people she hadn't talked to in years. Her supervisor from work asking if it was really her in the video. A reporter from the local news station requesting an interview. "Mom, you're going viral," Carmen said, staring at her own phone in disbelief. "People are sharing this everywhere." Rosa sat down heavily on the couch. She had thought tonight would be a small performance for a few hundred people. Maybe it would go well, maybe it wouldn't, but either way, it would be her little moment and then life would go back to normal. Now it seemed like the whole city was watching. "I can't do this," she whispered. "It's too much. Too many people will be expecting something I can't give them." Lucia sat beside her and took her hand. "Mom, they're not expecting anything except what you already are. A woman who loves music. That's all you need to be." Rosa looked at her daughter, then at the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Then at her hands, which had cleaned so many floors and scrubbed so many toilets but had also created so much beauty. Maybe Lucia was right. Maybe she didn't need to be anything more than herself. Tonight she would walk onto that stage and play, not as the girl she used to be or the concert pianist she never became. Just as Rosa, who had lived and loved and lost and kept going. That would have to be enough. Rosa stood backstage, listening to the muffled sounds of the audience filling the concert hall. Through a crack in the curtain, she could see the seats filling up fast. Every single one. There had to be over 1,000 people out there. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Wei appeared beside her, still wearing her wrist brace. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm going to throw up," Rosa said honestly. Wei laughed softly. "That's normal. I throw up before every major performance. Well, not literally, but I feel like I will." She squeezed Rosa's shoulder with her good hand. "You're going to be wonderful. Just remember what I said. Play for yourself, not for them." A stage manager with a headset approached. 5 minutes, Rosa. We'll announce you right after the intermission. 5 minutes. Rosa closed her eyes and tried to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like her daughter had taught her from some video she watched online. She thought about running, just walking out the stage door and disappearing into the night. Going back to her apartment, back to her keyboard, back to her quiet life where nobody expected anything from her except clean floors and empty trash cans. But then she thought about Lucia's face this morning when she hugged Rosa goodbye. The pride in her eyes. The way Carmen had made her promise to play the Guatemalan song just for her. The way her supervisor Tom had actually smiled and said, "Good luck tonight. Rosa, make us proud." She thought about Profesora Alvarez, who probably didn't even remember the quiet girl who used to practice for hours in the conservatory basement. About Luis, who had believed she could do anything. About all the versions of herself she had been over the years and how they had all led to this moment. "Rosa," the stage manager said gently. "It's time." Rosa opened her eyes. She smoothed down her thrift store dress and walked toward the stage entrance. Through the curtain, she could hear Mr. Peterson's voice over the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with our competition finalists, we have a very special intermission performance. Many of you may have seen the video that's been circulating online today. What you're about to witness is the true power of music, how it lives in unexpected places and unexpected people. Please welcome to the stage, making her concert debut after 25 years, Rosa Martinez." The curtain opened, and Rosa stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first. She couldn't see individual faces, just a sea of people and the glow of phone screens. So many phone screens. Everyone was recording. This moment would be captured forever, for better or worse. Her legs felt like water as she walked to the piano. The applause was polite but uncertain. She could feel the audience's curiosity. Who was this woman? Why was she here? Could she really play, or was this just some viral video trick? Rosa sat down at the piano bench. She adjusted her position slightly, the way Profesora Alvarez had taught her. Shoulders relaxed, back straight, hands curved naturally. She looked out at the audience one more time. In the front row, she found them. Lucia and Carmen sitting on either side of an empty seat. The seat where Luis would have been if he were still alive. Her daughters were both smiling, both with tears already forming in their eyes. Rosa turned back to the piano. She placed her hands on the keys and she began to play. The opening notes of Chopin's ballade filled the concert hall, soft and mysterious. Her fingers found each note with certainty she didn't know she possessed. The weeks of anxiety, the years of doubt, all of it melted away. There was only the music. She played the gentle sections with tenderness, remembering every early morning when she had watched her daughters sleep, grateful for their presence in her life. She played the powerful sections with strength, channeling every difficult choice she had made, every sacrifice, every moment she wanted to give up, but didn't. The audience disappeared. The cameras disappeared. Even the concert hall itself seemed to fade. She was 17 again, playing in the conservatory, believing in magic. She was 25, playing at her wedding on a borrowed keyboard, watching Luisa's face light up. She was 39, teaching Carmen her first simple melody, seeing her daughters wonder at making music. She was all of those versions of herself at once, and the music held them all. When she reached the final section, the part where the ballad builds to its dramatic conclusion, her hands flew across the keys with impossible speed. This was the section that had taken her months to master as a teenager. The section she had practiced in the middle of the night on her silent keyboard, pressing the keys with no sound coming out, just to keep the muscle memory alive. Now those years of silent practice paid off. Her hands knew exactly where to go. The final chord rang out, powerful and clear. Rosa held it, letting it echo through the hall until the last vibration faded into silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the concert hall exploded with sound. The entire audience rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. People were shouting. In the front row, her daughters were openly crying. Wee was standing in the wings, clapping so hard her injured wrist must have hurt. But Rosa barely heard any of it. She was still lost in the music, still feeling the echo of those last notes in her chest. Mr. Peterson appeared at the side of the stage, gesturing for her to stand and bow. Rosa did awkwardly, not sure what to do with her hands. The applause somehow got even louder. "We have one more piece," Mr. Peterson said into the microphone, trying to quiet the crowd. "Please." The audience settled back into their seats, but the energy in the room had completely changed. They weren't curious anymore. They were believers. Rosa sat back down. This next piece was the important one. The one that told her real story. "This song is from my home country," she said into the microphone, her accent thick with emotion. "It's called Luna de Celaju. My grandmother used to sing it to me when I was small. It's about the moon shining over the mountains of Guatemala, about missing home, about carrying your past with you wherever you go." She began to play her arrangement. The melody was simple at first, just the folk tune her grandmother had sung. But then she wove in harmonies, added complexity, transformed it into something that was both traditional and entirely new. She added elements of the classical music she had studied, created bridges between her past and present, between Guatemala and America, between who she had been and who she had become. This was the piece that made several people in the audience cry. Not just her daughters, but strangers who understood what it meant to leave home, to sacrifice dreams, to keep going when everything was hard. When she finished, the silence lasted even longer this time. Then the applause came again, but different, deeper, more emotional. Rosa stood and bowed one final time. As she walked off stage, her legs were shaking again, but for a different reason. She had done it. She had actually done it. Backstage was chaos. People wanted to talk to her, congratulate her, ask her questions. Wei hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. Mr. Peterson was already talking about future performances, about recording studios who had called during the show, about music schools who wanted to offer her teaching positions. But all Rosa wanted was to see her daughters. She found them waiting near the stage door. They ran to her, and all 3 of them held each other, crying and laughing at the same time. "Mom, you are incredible," Lucia said. Everyone was recording. "This is going to be everywhere." "I don't care about that," Rosa said, and she meant it. "I just care that you were here, that you saw me play, really play." "Dad would have been so proud," Carmen whispered. Rosa nodded, unable to speak. She knew Luis had been there somehow, in the empty seat between their daughters, in the music itself. Over the next few days, the videos spread across the internet. Millions of views, news articles, interview requests from television shows. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. A publisher wanted her to write a book. Rosa said no to most of it. She accepted a part-time teaching position at a community music school, working with students who couldn't afford expensive private lessons. She gave a few more concerts, always including her Guatemalan arrangement, always dedicating it to the people who worked invisible jobs and carried hidden dreams. She quit cleaning offices but kept her job at the concert hall. Not as a janitor, but as a music consultant. She helped select guest artists and sometimes performed herself. But her favorite moments were still the late nights, after everyone had gone home, when she would sit at that Steinway grand piano in the empty hall. Sometimes Wei would join her, and they would play duets, laughing when they made mistakes. Sometimes her daughters would come and listen, doing homework in the front row. And sometimes Rosa would play alone, just like that night when everything changed. She would play for herself. For Luis, for Profesora Alvarez, for her grandmother, for everyone who ever had to put their dreams away in a box and pretend they didn't exist. Because Rosa had learned something important that night on stage. Dreams don't die, they just wait. They hibernate like seeds buried in frozen ground, waiting for the right moment to push through the soil and bloom. Sometimes that moment comes when you're 17 and the world is full of possibilities. Sometimes it comes when you're 42, wearing a thrift store dress, with shaking hands and a heart full of fear. The important thing is that when that moment comes, when someone asks you to play, when the universe offers you one more chance, you say yes, you walk onto that stage. You sit at that piano, and you let the music speak for all the years you stayed silent. Rosa had found her voice again, and she would never let it go quiet again. 6 months later, a young woman walked into the community music school where Rosa taught. She was wearing a housekeeper's uniform and carrying a backpack. She approached Rosa nervously. "Excuse me," she said in accented English. "I saw your video. The one where you played at the concert hall. I used to play piano too back in my country, but I haven't played in years. I thought maybe it was too late. But then I saw you and I thought..." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. Rosa smiled and took her hand. "It's never too late," she said. "Come, let me show you." She led the young woman to a piano and the music began again. A new story, a new dream, another life about to bloom, because that's what music does. It passes from person to person, from heart to heart, carrying hope forward through time. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to play when they think nobody's listening, because someone is always listening. Someone is always waiting for permission to dream again. Rosa had given that permission to herself, and now she would spend the rest of her life giving it to others.